Finally, we have a film from the Dardenne brothers about a son who has to deal with his immoral and unsavory father. This is the 1996 film Promesse. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.0 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.7 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 95% fresh, and a Metacritic of 87. As for accolades, it's on the Criterion Collection spine number 620. I'm going to start off with being a little honest here. I've never heard of Promesse, and I've never heard of the Dardenne brothers either until now. Again, this is one of those 1996 films that I decided to watch because I'm reviewing 1996 films. And I'm going to say, this was a very good movie. It has a very sobering look on family values, but also of human trafficking. The whole story of the film is that you follow this teenager who has a father who basically smuggles humans into Belgium and then basically takes advantage of them. I wouldn't say the film is about the young man realizing what his dad's doing is overall wrong. I feel like in the film, he just feels guilty about an action that happens, and he has to correct that action. I'm not entirely sure if the child feels like what his dad is doing is wrong necessarily. I don't think he thought of it that deeply, but he just feels guilty about something that happens in the movie that involves this lady. I think the two main leads in this film are excellent. I especially like the young man in the film. The person who plays the father is pretty disturbing and creepy at times. He's also very good in the film. But what I will say is, as a coming-of-age film, I think The Promise does a really good job showing the maturation of this young boy without it really being too on the nose. Again, I have questions as to whether he really thinks that what his dad's doing is wrong overall, or what happened in the movie was wrong. And I don't think the film explores it all that much, although I do believe in the end he kind of just does not want to deal with his father ever again. I do feel that way. But I think the film works best as a coming-of-age film, but it also shows how people like the father really takes advantage of others who have no societal context, and takes advantage of people who have no context as to how society that they live in works. And I think it does a very good job of showing that. I will say that it's not as brutal as I was expecting it to be. It can be a bit harrowing at times. It can be a little disturbing at times. I was expecting it to be much more brutal than it was. It is in a certain way. It doesn't overdo it. They show little pockets of humanity in the film, not from the father, of course, but from the child and other things that are going on in the film. But the film does a very good job of actually making it not as black and white as you'd expect this movie to be. But I will say I think the film does treat the father as someone who is just inherently a bad person. La Promesse is a really good film. If you have not checked it out on the Criterion channel. Very good movie. Now in every episode of Watch Rate Heart, I only give you my opinions of the film I'm watching. I also give you the opinions of the Letterboxd community. And this first review is from Matt Singer. Matt gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Matt says, a unique coming-of-age story rather than the traditional loss of innocence amidst harsh lessons about adulthood's moral compromises. La Promise's young protagonist must instead come to recognize his complicity in his family's immoral deeds and to strive to do better than the previous generation. Instead of filling the viewer with nostalgia for a simpler and more idyllic past, it encourages you to take action in the present while simultaneously showing how hard and how expensive it is to do the right thing. That's something I didn't really think about, actually. This film does show very distinctly that money drives everything in what's going on in this film. And for the young man to do the right thing, pretty much has to drain himself out in order to do it. But I do like Matt Singer's interpretation of what the movie is about. I do agree to a certain extent. I don't think really the main character deals with the complicity of his family's immoral deeds. I still don't think he thinks that what they're doing is wrong. I think the action of what happened in the movie is what he felt was wrong, and that he had to correct that action. I'm not entirely sure he thinks what his dad's doing overall as a job is wrong. I think that's how we feel about it, and as you should. I'm not entirely sure that the young man in this film feels that way. I think eventually he will, but I don't think that it shows that in the film. This next review is from Lid. Lid gives it 3 stars out of 5, and Lid says, this is a very well-made slice-of-life film whose quality is higher and more deserving than what I'm giving it, but I'd be dishonest to say that I enjoyed watching this enough to score it any higher. A bit of an emotional disconnect. Those last 2 minutes, though, wow. I wouldn't say that the film is distant or is meant to make you feel disconnected. I think the film wants you to look at the film in a very sobering way and just show it as it is, instead of over-dramatizing or doing much more broad things to make the film, I guess, a little more palatable for others. That's how I feel about it, and I think it worked for me, honestly, that the film was just being very direct as to what's going on, but I can understand the emotional disconnect that Lid had. had on this. And finally, this last review is from Russman. Russman gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Russman says, would not want to be a tenant at this place. Yeah, I would have to say that the location that this movie is in is pretty much Squalor Town. And it kind of shows more about the character of the father, as well as the actions that he shows in the film as well. So yeah. So, in review, La Promesse is a sobering look at human trafficking. It's also a poignant, quiet, coming-of-age tale about morality. The 2 main leads of the film are excellent, and it's not as brutal as I was expecting, though it is still harrowing at times. I thought this was a very good movie. In fact, I thought this was a great movie. It's probably one of the better films that came out in 1996. I'm going to give this 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. Very good movie by the Dardenne brothers. It makes me very curious to watch their other films that they have released as well. I'm not even aware of what the other movies they've done, to be completely honest. For this being my first movie of theirs, I'm actually very curious to see what their other filmography is. Again, the 2 leads are great, and it tells a really good story that is both about how horrible human trafficking is, but also a poignant coming-of-age film revolving around the teen in the movie. So overall, 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for La Promesse. Again, it is on Criterion Channel if you are interested. Now let's recap the movies I reviewed in this week's episodes. I gave 2.5 stars out of 5 for On Golden Pond. Henry Fonda and Katharine Hepburn are charming in their roles. It's a cute and sentimental film, but it also takes a long time for it to start to get going. I gave 3.5 stars out of 5 for After Sun. It has a very good performance by Paul Mescal, but it is too direct for its tone poem structure for me, though I felt the ending was quite devastating. I gave 2.5 stars out of 5 for Kolia. It is a cute, charming, but very formulaic film, but the lead actor and main child actor in the film have pretty good chemistry together. And my film of the week is La Promesse, which I gave 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. The sober coming-of-age film involving a family who runs a human trafficking complex, and it has great performances by the leads. In some ways, even though it is a 90-minute film, it is actually a pretty complex film. It is something I'm going to watch again at some point to see if I can get more out of it, but it's definitely a very good movie. And that is it for this episode of Watch Straight Heart. But before I go, let's discuss next week's episodes. Since June is heading to the end, it's time to celebrate the summer season with films set in summer. I'm going to start the week reviewing the seminal documentary The Endless Summer, the Sean Baker directed The Florida Project, and 2 1996 films, Eric Rohmer's A Summer Tale and Edward Yang's Mahjong. Check those out next week. If you like any of the reviewers I've highlighted in this episode, you can check the video description for a link to their Letterboxd profile. Be sure to give them a follow and let them know that Brad from Watch Straight Heart sent you. You can follow me on Letterboxd and X at Watch Straight Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch Straight Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.